Of all the things a man can do, resisting sexual temptation is among the hardest. I've built an incredible natural physique. I graduated at one of the top universities in the world while battling several learning disabilities. I've written a book, and now I'm starting a fitness coaching industry, and I can tell you with full confidence, without a hint of hesitation, that withdrawing from sexual temptation is one of the hardest things that I've done. I don't actually know how long it's been since I've gotten any kind of, let's just say, release off, because all I know is that I started around COVID time, and COVID was about 5 years ago, so that's why I put 5 years in the title. I haven't become a monk or anything, I just haven't had the opportunity to get married, and I don't have, frankly, the means to get married right now. So about 85% of men have watched pornography in the past week, and I'd imagine that it's much worse among Generation Z and Generation Alpha. That effectively means that at least 85% of men are addicted to pornography. I say at least because I imagine it's actually a lot worse than that, because a lot of people aren't going to openly admit the fact that they watched pornography. It's frankly a humiliating act and a shameful thing to admit. And it's important to understand that pornography has this sort of all-consuming allure to men. It completely hijacks the way your brain is supposed to work. You could see more beautiful women on a singular shameful night than your ancestors could see in their entire lifetime. Let's talk about the benefits I've seen after quitting. First of all, what this did is that it reconsidered my sexual appetite, and I've generally heard this from a lot of other people. It reconfigures their sexual appetite. It's well established that porn works kind of like a drug, right? The more you do it, the more you have this desire to seek novel fetishes, or kinks as they say. And those fetishes move you away from understanding the actual purpose of sex, being bonding and babies. This is because it makes you focus intently on the pleasure of the act, not the end goal of the act. It fundamentally shifts things such that pleasure is the end goal, as opposed to understanding that pleasure is merely a byproduct concomitant to the sexual act. Quitting has made me more drawn to the natural female figure. This is how it's supposed to be, as opposed to being attracted to unnatural BBL, arguably cartoonish women. It's sort of like looking at the differences between NFL wives and NBA wives. I've noticed that a lot of the NFL wives have a sort of natural beauty to them. They're like, the sweetheart that you meet in high school, or a college girl that you'd see at your campus. Whereas NBA wives are more common to have a bunch of plastic surgery and have like BBLs and a lot of other gross stuff. And this is possibly because most NFL players are in college for at least 3 years. The NFL requires you to be out of high school for at least 3 years, as opposed to the NBA, wherein you can go to the NBA right out of college, right out of the first year of college. So perhaps the fame and fortune doesn't get to them as much, and they think more about school, they think more about the intimate things in life more, and that's a deterrent and also helps them warm up into the pro league. Porn quite literally removes your will. It makes you a sort of lobotomized zombie with lower impulse control and poorer decision making. So everyone in the comments who's probably going to get mad at me for this damning critique of pornography that I'm going to elucidate you guys on, you guys quite literally do not have the mental wherewithal to properly assess and evaluate what I'm saying. Their brain is unable to believe anything beyond naked lady pretty, must touch pee-pee. A Polly says naked lady pretty, but you don't touch pee-pee, must attack a Polly. I mean, these people are just not in the habit of thinking at all whatsoever. Their impulse control and decision making, key parts of what separates biologically humans from animals, is impaired. They have rewired themselves to a juvenile state. Their prefrontal cortex has lost gray matter, and they are unable to just critically think anymore. So often people, when I give my critique of pornography, they go out lashing like hyenas. And this is clearly a symptom of the fact that they themselves are addicted. Fourthly here, porn makes life in general less interesting. I've kind of mentioned this before, but you become kind of incapable of recognizing the natural beauty of a woman. You won't be able to just look at her eyes and just adore her eyes for being what they are. But it goes even beyond that, because life itself becomes dull. It's hard to find the motivation to do anything because, frankly, what's the point? None of anything in life is going to give you the same dopamine rush that you get from watching pornography. And your brain is already telling you that you fulfilled your basest desire. Because as guys, let's face it, most of what we do is ultimately to reproduce. So by artificially fulfilling that through pornography, we're telling our brain that we've already fulfilled our basest purpose. Fifthly, I realized that I was wasting a lot of time. I don't think I need to get into the specifics of things because that's just kind of weird, but yeah, I was wasting a lot of time. Sixthly, I think my ADHD symptoms actually went down. I think this is because I start to take more delight in actual regular accomplishments. It isn't actually quitting porn in and of itself that reaps results. It is the ideology of putting in time and effort in order to reap results. To delay gratification and put in work in order to succeed. Seventhly, it made me feel extremely empowered. I feel like I had control over my life and I can do anything I want so long as I put my mind to it. As men, we have this influx of testosterone during these critical periods of our life. And we need to learn to transmit that energy into something productive. We can't spend these critical years and this critical testosterone boost that we get from puberty withering ourselves away in the shackles of pornography. Pursue those repressed dreams that you've had. Don't be locked in the snares of pornography. Learn that skill you've always wanted to learn about. Pursue that dream that you've always had. Live life with a fire in your eyes. Most people who watch my videos lift weights because this is a fitness channel. Lifting weights increases your testosterone. And this may seem like it'll make it harder for you to ward off these temptations, and it will. But if you are able to actually channel that testosterone, channel that extra testosterone into something productive, you will be a greater force for good than you could have ever believed. That power that you have, once harnessed, will be a greater force for good. And the last benefit I've realized from quitting pornography is that it really helps my relationship with God. It removes extra barriers that pull me away from God. Before, I would feel as though my prayers aren't really all that useful, not really all that meaningful, because I know that in the next couple of days or even hours, I would probably just go back to sinning, not like just sinning inadvertently, but consciously sinning by watching pornography. So perhaps most importantly of all, it made it such that I could actually, maybe you shouldn't actually think this way, but this is just what happened when I quit. I could actually face God, and I feel as though I'm not, contradicting myself by praying. Think about what you're actually doing when you're watching pornography. You're sitting there watching, somewhat like a cuck, someone else having sex. Remove the screen and replace it with, binoculars or something, and you'll realize just how pathetic it actually is. When we look at porn, we're like faceless onlookers, peering like stalkers through a hotel while someone else is buying a prostitute. But it's worse than that because pornography is less honest. At least the peeping Tom is forced to reckon with his behavior. He's out in the cold, ducking in the bushes, and from there he sees the entire act for all it is, the whole dismal exchange. He doesn't get to flip in and out of dozens of scenes, consuming portions of it and glancing here and there at different scenes. He doesn't get to close the tab when it's all over and act like nothing happened. He's there like a stalker, like a stranger in the dark. He has to go home and deal with the reality of who he is and what he's just become. He is getting off to what ideally he would want to do, but instead he settles for the scraps. The porn viewer, on the other hand, feels insulated. What he's doing is identical, but doesn't seem that way because he feels safer. It's a screen, not a window. It's an amateur porn star, not a prostitute. His actions are legal, even normal by today's standards. Yes, he tells himself, I'm different. But you're not. That's a lie. Everything about pornography is a lie. We are growing up in a society wherein everyone has grown up on a diet of porn addiction and hookups. Who knows what society is going to look like? Hopefully we'll be able to ban the whole thing, but I'm not very confident that that's going to happen. And if the idea of banning pornography sounds crazy to you, then consider the fact that you are extremely beholden to this thing. You're like Gollum and his precious, desperately clinging onto this thing. For most of human existence, for most of Western society in general, we did not have this and we worked perfectly fine. In fact, we worked better. And now this is the part of the video where I'm either going to lose you or you're going to love me. I don't want to just make another porn bad video because those are kind of a dime a dozen at this point. A lot of people kind of understand that. I'm going to go even further beyond. I'm going to go Super Saiyan 3 on this. I'm going to go much deeper and tell you guys that you should also be a virgin. I myself am also a virgin, so I guess in this sense I've been on semen retention or whatever it's called for the past 5 years. People generally understand that they probably shouldn't be watching porn and maybe they justify it to themselves, but I think that in our brain we all inherently know that it's a shameful act. But saving yourself for marriage, that doesn't seem to be as intuitive to a lot of people. This is where I start to lose a lot of people when I start talking about sexual purity. But really, NoFap is only one part of the story. If you just stop at NoFap, you're only really getting frankly, you're only 30% of the way there. If you're still having premarital sex, you're missing the bigger picture. What you're actually doing really is you're trading one masturbatory device for another masturbatory device. I won't explain this part too much because it kind of detracts from the main point of the video. Maybe I can make a video about that later. But just know that understanding that virginity is meant for marriage and all sexual acts are meant for marriage is a key part in the sexual reconfiguration. Being a virgin now at 25 is not cool. I get shamed for it, but I must stay strong. If you're in the same position that I'm in, don't let anyone shame you for being a virgin. Because yeah, even Christians that I know shame me for being a virgin. They're at best confused, and at worst they actually shame me for being a virgin. I went to a Christian school and I talked to my classmates every once in a while, and this is their exact reaction. They're confused and they like kind of shame me for it. When I was in college, there was this guy who claimed to be a Russian Orthodox Christian, and he said that his goal was to make me lose my virginity before I graduated college. And he said it with a steely sort of conviction that he was dead serious that he was going to do it. And he would constantly look through girls on Instagram and try and DM them and try and get me to hook up with them. There are wolves in sheep's clothing. They are masquerading as Christians, and they are not your friend. Not everyone who says Lord, Lord is truly with Christ. So now being a virgin and being abstinent actually is good, but you also need to actually be pursuing women, and you also need to be actually attracting women. If your goal is to get married, you should be able to still make yourself attractive, right? Some Christians take pride in the fact that they're a virgin, but they don't really have any they're not really fighting any temptations, so not that it's a bad thing to, not have these temptations, but if you don't even have the ability to attract a woman, then it doesn't seem as impressive, right? I'm talking specifically about people who can attract women, who have attracted women, but they have warded off the temptations. Now, if you're a virgin and you're saving yourself for marriage, that still is in and of itself a good thing, but there's no doubt that it's more character building if you have the temptations and you're able to ward them off and build your character from overcoming them. Now, on relationships, being a virgin does not help you on the surface, but as you dig deeper and deeper into it, you realize that it ultimately does help you. Most people will think that you're immature when you tell them you're a virgin. They'll think that you're some kind of 13-year-old child who's just getting into his first relationship. But no, you are not immature. You are actually the most manly person that they've ever met, but their brains are too corrupted by sexual corrosion to realize it. You have reined in your sexual desires for the proper good, and have vigorously toiled against literal demons and came out on top. On the internet, in the circles that I'm in, I do get some congratulatory remarks for being a virgin on NoFap, but even then, generally speaking, people just think I'm kind of weird. And again, many Christians say the same thing about me. This is a really damning critique on the state of Christianity, and I mean damning literally, right? Some people get mad when I say this, but I mean literally damning, as in this sort of mentality is literally going to damn you. And pornography itself is putting you on a track to literally damn yourself. So I mean it in the completely biblical sense when I say damning. I say with no hesitation that you should wear your virginity as a badge of honor. What we gain too easily, we esteem too lightly. If you are a virgin with a couple of days or even years on NoFap, consider the fact that your first sexual encounter will be with the one that you love and the one that you will be with for the rest of your life. Your template for sexual attraction itself will be molded around that one person. You aren't the weird one. Everyone else is the weird one. You were acting in accord to how you were intelligently designed. You're standing clean in God-given pure water, whereas everyone else is literally ruminating in their own feces and asking you to join in. In a world where divorce and relational dissatisfaction are rampant, you dare to be different. Tons of women offer themselves up like a masturbatory device, like essentially a sentient fleshlight, but you resist. And speaking of women, going back to relationships, being a virgin is an extremely good way to weed out bad women. If they are turned off by the fact that you're a virgin, they fundamentally do not understand relationships. Let me say this again in another way. If women turn you down because you're not experienced enough, you should get down on your hands and knees and thank God because you just dodged a bullet. You two are so fundamentally incompatible that it is just going to cause you a ton of headaches if you get into a relationship with that person. Relationships are about growing with someone on the grand adventure of life, not about them gaining the maximum amount of pleasure that they can derive from you. As an aside, this is also why the idea of being sexually compatible is literally fake, or rather, it fundamentally misunderstands the purpose of sex. I have no doubt that some people have sexual appetites that match better with other people compared to another person, but the point is bonding and giving yourself up to that other person. The Bible says that our body is not ours, and likewise, the wife's body is not theirs. There's a push and pull relationship in that sense. You give yourself up to her, and she gives herself up to you, and if you are humbly attuned enough, you will derive maximum pleasure from the fact that you're just with your wife. When you're on NoFap and a virgin, you're very sensitive to any sort of sexual titillation. No pun intended. Make sure that as your brain forms this critical sexual benchmark, that it's with the right person. With the person that you will be with forever in the union, the holy union of matrimony. Your first sexual encounter leaves a powerful mental imprint. Your brain creates powerful synapses that bond you towards everything that happened leading up to the event. Everything that happens within the event becomes very much ingrained. Sex is the biggest dopamine hit we can get naturally, so it's going to create very powerful synapses. And this is why people get unnatural sexual desires like furries. This is one of those things wherein they'll admit it if you ask them, but the moment you point it out, they get mad at you for pointing it out. Ask furries how they came to their sexual fetishes, and they'll tell you every time that they had some kind of weird experience when they were younger, and that sort of left a permanent mental imprint, and now they want to have sex in anthropomorphic animal costumes. Now imagine your first sexual experiences with your husband or your wife. If you can find all sexual experiences between you and your spouse, the likelihood that you will search for sexual experiences outside of there are much lower, hence why people who are virgins tend to have longer marriages. Virgins at the marriage bed tend to have longer marriages. You are molding your sexual appetite around her, and she likewise. So a lot of you guys are likely wondering how I was able to fight back. I go to the gym, there's a lot of temptation. There's always things competing for my attention. One of the ways I fight off against it is by decorating my room with lots of Christian paraphernalia. I mean, this shirt is one example, right? I don't really wear this in public, but if we have a bunch of clothes like this about Christian attire, then the likelihood that you're going to lustfully flirt with another woman is extremely low, because that's just an insane cognitive dissonance that you'd have to be almost mentally deranged to ignore. This is also part of the reason I created my own Christian merchandise. I don't have it with me right now. I'm not wearing it right now, but I can link in the description if you're interested. But I have a bunch of Japanese weeb Christian attire because I think it looks cool, and also because it makes me focus on what actually I'm trying to focus on. My car, before I crashed it, actually had at the front of its license plate that said "Believe." So if I wanted to go out with a girl, I'd have to walk outside and see my car with a cross that says "Believe" on it. And then I had to really reconsider why I'm going on this date. Second of all, if this is possible for you, not exactly possible for me right now, but try to go to a gym with fewer women. I know that some people will tell you that, well, when there's women there, you lift more. That's probably true, but what's an extra few pounds to your own soul? Honestly, I take my soul over that. But yeah, if that's not possible for you, then you're going to have to be constantly looking at the ceiling or looking at the ground, because that's what the sexual revolution did. It made it such that guys can't walk around and look forward anymore. We have to look at the ceiling or look at the ground now. What I also did is I really internalized the idea that porn is cheating. This is one of those claims that sounds insane to people who have a porn habit, who are probably watching porn in their relationships right now, but it makes a lot of sense to people who still have the ability to actually think. Your porn habit is an adultery habit. I think it goes without saying that actively searching out for other women while you're in a relationship is cheating. Actively getting off to other women while you're in a relationship is even worse. That's what porn is, though. Actively getting off to other women. Just because it's online, just because there's a screen in front of you, doesn't change your state of mind. You are fundamentally giving into your sexual desire with someone who is not your partner. But if you don't have a partner and you're like, okay, well, this is all cool, but I don't have a partner, you're still training yourself to become an adulterer if you ever do get a partner. Because even if you aren't literally having sex with the women on your screen, you're still mentally doing something very similar, and your brain doesn't know the difference. This is why sexting with other people is considered cheating. The physical act doesn't absolve you of all the blame. Apart from the most debased people, I think basically everyone was going to agree with this. For some reason, though, porn gets this random exception. It seems to really do that all the time when it comes to age verification laws as well. Porn gets this random exception. People seem to just love giving porn this random exception. Probably just indicative of the fact that they are so beholden to it and they don't want to see it be criticized or gone away in any sense. The fact of the matter is, very clear, porn is cheating. Your partner shouldn't have to be competing with a screen. Lastly, what I did is I made an extremely long document on my computer about all the reasons I hate pornography and all the reasons I want to save myself from marriage. I actually still have the document, and I basically used that and copied and pasted it and made it this video. And after I did this, it took me 3 or 4 days to write it down. I ended up writing tens of thousands of words on it. It created such a strong cognitive dissonance that I didn't even want to watch pornography anymore. It also ironically led to me developing my book. I shared it with some of my cool friends, and they told me that it was really good, and it was a really passionate dissertation, and that I should write a whole book on it. Obviously, I didn't write a book on it, but I did take the idea of writing a book on things I'm passionate about and that transformed into muscular Christianity. And now you just got an extended preface to my book, which I obviously did not elucidate on in the actual book. But yeah, this also means that in a very direct way, that if I didn't stop watching pornography, I wouldn't have written my book. Not only because I wouldn't have had the will to write my book, I wouldn't have had the discipline to write my book, but also because I wouldn't have even had the idea to write something, to write so passionately about a topic. But I wouldn't have had the idea to write long form about something that I get really passionate about. Doing all this is great, but there are a lot of challenges, right? I'm not hypogonadal. I still am a young male with an extremely high sex drive. I still have this desperate desire for female companionship. Paul said that it's best to be celibate, but if you can't be celibate, then you should be getting married. And I think that only people who have like the supernatural gift of celibacy could probably go their entire life without having sex. This is like the nuns, the priests, and the people who are just especially devoted to God. Unfortunately, I don't think I have that ability. I think that I definitely do want to get married. And in general, right, I'm not perfect. It's not as though I still don't struggle with temptations. I ultimately know that being celibate is just a stepping stone to the end point of getting married. So I think it will be a bad idea to leave this video off without giving you guys some advice. I understand many people have fallen into sexual sin and they feel guilty about it, and I'm sorry about that. On one hand, it's good to acknowledge the fact that what you did was wrong, but on the other hand, you can't fully take back the natural consequences of your sin. God will of course spiritually forgive you and wash you new, but there still are temporal elements of our sin that don't get fully vanished. The average person is first exposed to pornography when they're like 9 years old at this point. Before they even know what sex is, they've already binged hundreds of hours of pornography, most likely. What chance do people have at a healthy sexual relationship? They've already been injecting hundreds of hardcore pornography into their cerebral before they've ever even thought about being with a woman. Before they've seen a woman naked, before they've slept with a woman, before they've kissed with a woman, before they've even held hands with a woman, they've already seen a woman debased and defiled in every which way. This isn't an excuse for our problems, but it's to just give it perspective. We are all simultaneously victims of a terrible culture, and we are also participants, active, willing participants of the terrible culture. And this is likely the experience of all of our lives, right? Because I'm a male born in the 21st century. I've dealt with this. I think that older people, boomers, they might not fully understand the scope of things, but like I do. I was there with you guys. Now the only hope for a better future is to stop now. Literally today. Don't go ahead and schedule like, I'm gonna do this after the video. No, you literally stop right now. Your brain is luckily very plastic and can mold itself back to its default setting to some degree, but it becomes much harder if you don't start now. You need a sufficiently long period of abstinence. People who struggle with porn are not irredeemably bad people, right? I won't yell at a person who struggles with porn addiction any more than I'll yell at a crack addict who is trying to get his next fix. But at least the crack addict won't find many people, aside from his dealer, I guess, who will actively tell him that it's actually a good thing, it's actually a healthy thing to be smoking crack. If he ventures outside of his abandoned shack where he scores his dope, he probably won't find any respectable person who tells you, hey man, it's totally fine, just you do you. Crack isn't even a big deal, it's actually totally natural to smoke crack. So in a way, the crack addict actually has a leg up over the porn addict. The porn addict has to fight a myriad of people who are actively egging him on to continue his addiction. He has to fight off against people who are trying to convince him that it's just harmless fun. And even worse, porn is far more ubiquitous and easy to access. Just type in 4 letters into Google and you get your hit. And you can't even watch too many modern shows nowadays that don't have a random sex scene in it. You have to understand right now that your brain is telling you that it needs to have porn. But you need to fundamentally rewire it into telling it that it doesn't actually need it. This is actually why you get the cravings that you get. What I used to do to help myself is whenever I would feel these urges, I would literally just push my technology away to the side and I would sit there and wait for the urges to go away. This is my way of reprogramming my brain to tell it that you don't actually need to do this thing. You can just put it away and sit there and nothing's going to happen to you. But of course, in my experience, the best way to actually curb this is to tell your brain that there's something better out there. There's actual female companionship that you can look forward to. Your mind craves female companionship and it grows restive without it. And I understand not everyone can do this because of where they are in life. And if that's not possible for you, then a good step is to create a bunch of porn blockers on your phones and your tablets and your computers and stuff. Idle hands are the devil's playthings, or however that quote goes. And there is a lot of truth to that. Go out and do things, especially go out of your room and do things, because the room makes it way too easy. If you need solitude to like do homework and stuff and you feel like your room is the only good place to do that, then no, it's not. Go to a library or something and go to a coffee shop or something and do it. And finally, get a support group. whether that be like-minded real-life communities or like-minded online communities. I'm not sure which one to recommend because this is not what I did, but I hear it's very helpful, and then just logically speaking, it's very helpful. So if you guys have any ideas, put those in the comments and help people out. Every fiber of your being needs to be dedicated to rebelling against this thing. You need to hate it. And if you think you hate it right now, you need to hate it even more. Rebel against the entire sexual revolution. I hate what this did to my own life, and I hate what it's doing currently to young men's lives. I hate how this force, at least in my experience, is perhaps the #1 deterrent from people becoming Christian. I cannot tell you how many people get a whiff of sex, and then all of a sudden, they become more loose in their Christian beliefs. I can't tell you how many people leave Christianity altogether. Their eternal security is being sacrificed at the altar of hentai. Because the vices are connected, right? Once you start being permissive of one thing, then other things become more permissible. And ultimately, if you're allowing all these things in your head, then at some point you're going to have to choose between God and your desires. And your habitual desires will be too overwhelming that you're not going to be able to choose the right thing. It's extremely hard for most people to even see the truth if their eyes are blurred by pornography. I'm so done with it. I want it gone, destroyed, burnt to the ground, and in its stead, a 10,000-foot statue of Jesus Christ is erected. Lastly, I'll leave you with this message. Transcend your primitive desires. Become all who God made you to be. Fulfill the natural functions that God designed you to fulfill. God has the best plan for you in life, and you should trust Him. I honestly believe that this is a rite of passage for all men, and upon completion, you will become one step closer to becoming that ideal self that God has envisioned for you. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Consider joining my fitness coaching program for more mentorship like this, and I'll catch you all next time. Peace.